Just to the northwest of Noosa in Queensland lies the small town of Gympie, population a bit over 50,000. It's a far cry from the big bustling coffee metropolis that is Melbourne, population 5 million, some 2,000 kilometres to the south. But that's the journey today's guests made, and I'm told that the culture shock was pretty real. Hi, my name's Tom Andronis, and with me is Dave Burchett, and we're very excited to welcome Andrew Baldry, General Manager of Coffee Wholesale at Degani Australia, to the Coffee Lab. Andrew, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
How big was that culture shock?
What an intro, though.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I guess it was definitely a bit of a change for me moving. That was nearly 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And getting down into Melbourne after, I guess like most baristas, starting my career as a baby barista, looking after a couple of cafes in a country town, thinking I was pretty great and loving what I was doing, but you make the move down to a big city and start your first corporate role, and it's definitely a shock.
Yeah. What was it that sort of struck you the most?
I think in your own bubble, in your own cafe, and of course I was working in a franchise brand at the time, you think that you're the best of the best. You've got this job, you're moving down to the big smoke to start, you're going to show all these guys how it's done. And then you get down here and you see that every single cafe that you're about to work with has its own challenges. And you also have to be able to compete in the Melbourne market, and not everyone in the Melbourne market is going to love a franchise brand. So that was a learn.
Which franchise brand were you in at the time?
Glory Jeans Coffees at the time.
Okay.
Yeah. I spent the first 10 years of my career with them.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Right. And how did you handle that sort of change from a personal perspective?
Yeah, I think from moving down, and when you grow up in a small country town, you're surrounded by your friends and family. Everything's 5 minutes away, so it's very, everyone's very close. And I got down here and I knew no one.
Yeah.
So for me, it was very easy to just throw myself into work and to try and learn as much as I possibly could. And I think that's how in my first corporate role, I tried to really understand what market I was working in and learn as much as I could about the industry.
Weather, how was that? Like, it's a big change. I know it's a boring one, but
I still
it's a big
miss
change.
it every year. So,
Really?
I mean, I don't think I can go back to Queensland now, though, and spend a Christmas where I'm not having to change my shirt every 2 or 3 hours. You really do acclimatise, but I still miss the sun.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I don't cope with humidity.
No.
I just can't. I can't. It makes me all emotional. I just can't do it.
Considering it's about 12 degrees outside today, I think I would take the humidity.
Yeah,
to be
mate.
honest.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Compared to the 1 degree 2 days ago, we'll definitely take this.
Well, that's right. What did you learn through that massive period of transition?
The first 2 years in Victoria, I guess my role changed very quickly. So I started off as an introductory operations trainer with Glory Jeans. So I looked after 15 stores. Very quickly, I started to look after the entire state, and then my role grew into a national role. So I was looking after four states across the country, and that changed really quickly, and my scope grew so quickly that I had to grow as well. And I think that challenge has, I guess, what's sort of just driven me to continue to grow myself personally and in my career.
It's big changes quickly, and the industry was different then to what it is now, even within the franchise model as well. Did you have a particular, I suppose, task or part of your role that was your least favourite when you were at that stage of your career?
I think it was all new, so I didn't really have it, and we were so busy, so I don't think that we had a chance to not enjoy it. I think some of the most challenging things for me was coaching a team of baristas through Barista Chain Challenge, having not done any competitions myself. That was full on, like very quickly having to learn and how to represent the brand well and not fall over on my face with this poor group of 6 people that have never also done a competition before. That was a challenge.
Yeah, and again, moving to another state, changing roles quickly in a large business, like a dynamic business as well, can be a little lonely. Did you have a mentor for any of this process? Like whether it was professional, personal, someone that gave you some guidance?
Yeah, in the beginning, I had two really close colleagues. They were also operations trainers across the country, and their names were Jolene Kelly and Melita Ferraro, and they were phenomenal in guiding me towards all things that I guess helped me to become a better operations trainer. Then as my role developed and I actually got out of the training space and moved into business coaching and more business development roles, the biggest person that's made an impact on my career and my life is a lady named Karina Murphy, and she just taught me how important it was to be a 360-degree thinker and really break down every problem as if it was your own problem, and what's the best solution for all. And I think about the lessons that she taught me in my career every day. Like, just one of those phenomenal people that you think that person is stellar.
And before we jump into Degani, I mean, it sounds like mentoring has had an impact on your life. Is it something that you now sort of think it's important to pay that forward?
I do. I love it. I'm super proud of the fact that in our business currently in Degani, we have a really clear pathways program to help younger people within our business come up through the ranks. And I guess it's kind of like how I also came up. So for me, it makes a lot of sense to, and it's very rewarding to invest time back into those people. But we've taken people out of our corporate stores and turned them into business analysts. We've taken gun baristas out of our stores and turned them into operations trainers. Like these are the things I think that give a career pathway to people that maybe want to grow beyond being a store manager or being a barista. And I think that's really positive too.
Yeah, I've said this before, I think even on the podcast, that context matters so much when you're working in an organisation. And I think, people are really set up for success if they're trying to talk to someone about their daily operational function in the business and they've actually done it. They can be a lot more empathetic in their approach.
Absolutely.
Because they really, really understand it.
And they're also they've lived it as well, like you say.
Yeah.
But what better than an operations trainer that has actually worked in a business, other than finding someone in market that might be a great coffee trainer but doesn't actually know the intricacies of this brand. Yeah.
So on that, 49 stores,
Mm-hmm.
4 states, Victoria, Queensland, New South Wales and WA.
Yes.
4 store types, so cafe, restaurant, kiosk and drive-through, and 120,000 odd coffees every week.
Mm-hmm.
For those, they're the quick stats, but for those who are not familiar with the Degani business and the Degani brand, give us the quick brief.
Yeah, sure. I guess the best way to describe Degani is we like to consider ourselves as the flexible franchise. So we think that there is no one approach to having a cafe and having a successful cafe in an area. So a cookie cutter approach and every menu's identical and every store looks identical, it doesn't work. And I think maybe that idea is partly grown from the fact that we began in Melbourne and it's the most competitive market in Australia. But the idea of being flexible and allowing our owners creativity and meeting the needs of the demographic in the community, I think is what makes us successful.
And what sort of, across, if there is even a single answer to this, but across the business, what sort of customer experience are you trying to create?
I think it's always customer centric, and that's the main thing. Great coffee, great food, and amazing service. I think in the reality of cafe culture across Melbourne, everyone has coffee, everyone has food, everyone has tables and chairs and a shop front. The only difference in our businesses are the people. So for us to be able to really, create an experience that's exceptional, it has to be driven by our team. Yeah. And
how does the franchise model work?
Yeah. So we have various store types, as we said, and the idea is that when they join us, I think everyone that comes to us has a cafe dream, just doesn't necessarily know how to do it. And I think what we can offer them is a set of parameters and a set of guidance that will help them succeed. So we have a few things that are unique to us. We call it the Degani management system, and those are elements of helping our owners really control cost, really control labor, really control the way that they train their teams and the way that they recruit, giving them buying power. All those things, I guess, that if you're starting from scratch, you'd be looking at, I don't know, 5 paper suppliers. What coffee supplier am I going to use? All of those question marks are answered by us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting having multiple formats
Yes.
under a brand as well. I know some companies are starting to do it a little bit, but and it's obviously, you know, because of the whole COVID thing. The drive-through format really interests me actually. There seems to be demand for that.
Yeah.
Is that like, obviously without giving too much away, is that strategically something important for your business?
It is, and happy to talk about it. When I first began with Degani, I was actually tasked with creating the drive-through concept. So it was a bit of a passion project for me, and I guess helped that I come from Gloria Jeans and had drive-through experience and understanding. A million moons ago, I've also cut my teeth in QSR McDonald's management. So I've seen it all. I've seen all sides of drive-through, and creating the concept for us was about knowing what success was happening in Queensland with drive-through. It's slow to take up here, but after COVID, it's finally slowly really taking off, and we've got 2 types of a drive-through. We've got a full format drive-through that has a normal traditional drive-through lane, headsets, all of those different things. You can also dine in that drive-through. So after you can do your normal drive-through, grab or what you want, but then you can also come inside and you can still order a smashed avo. Then
Can you order the smashed avo to your car?
You could. I don't know how you'd eat that, but you could give it a go.
Disaster.
Yeah, disaster on the ceiling or something. That's what I would do. And we've also got little pod kiosks as well. So it's sort of like I guess almost like 2 types. But both of the concepts, we wanted it to feel like you were still at your local cafe, but you just happened to be in your car still. So you're still getting that friendly service. You still know your barista by name. They know you. All those important things that make a cafe great.
So if I was a prospective owner of, you know, store number 50.
Yes.
Do I come to you and say, I'd like to open a drive-through or I'd like to open a kiosk? Or do I come to you and say, I'm keen, what's next?
That's usually the first question. So I'm very keen at what's the next steps. So there's a couple of ways it can work. We have people in development that can try and find sites in the specific areas. Often people want to own their business within 20 minutes of where they live, which can be difficult, right? If you're living in an area and we would say, that's probably not the best place to open a cafe right now. That's saturated, or that's not our market, or we've already got one there. And then the next thing is they could also bring us a site. So they could say, I found this place and I really like the idea of it. And then we could go and run it across our set of expectations and make sure it's a viable site.
Yeah, right.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do the 4 different types of stores kind of coexist and interplay? Is there? I mean, obviously, there's a market for all of them, isn't there?
Yeah, I think the success of any franchise is not oversaturating the suburbs as well. So we're still a small enough player. We only have 49 stores, and we haven't had to be like, there's going to be, I don't know, Frankston 1 and Frankston 2. It hasn't had to be that kind of conversation, and I think that's really important to feel like they own their own territory. Yeah.
And how about I suspect, I don't know this to be true, I'm not a coffee person, you guys are. I suspect there's a little bit of tension or potentially even prejudice against, you know, chain or franchise kind of concepts. I don't know if that's accurate, but is that true and how does it work?
Well, I think the funny thing is consistency became a dirty word at one point.
Right.
But I think people ultimately do want consistency. Like particularly in the environment we're at the moment as well. If you're paying for something, you want an experience, you want it to be high quality, and you'd like it to be the same every time if possible. But I think it's that experience, like that retail experience almost is what people are looking for to be a a little bit unique.
Yeah, or elevated in a way.
Yeah.
I think that the challenge for us is we don't have one type of smashed avocado. So there's 17 versions of it across our many menus. So
Wow.
and that's part of being a flexible franchise, that that person might want to have halloumi in their menu, and that chef might want to have pomegranate seeds, whatever it might be. That element of how we operate does make us feel like an independent. So the consistency is, we like to say the only thing that's the same is the name above the door and the coffee in the hopper, and that's our consistency.
It's funny because like my exposure in the past to multi-site and franchise groups, the head officers have always said to me, our franchise partners, they buy a franchise, but then they don't always want to like abide by the systems.
Yes, yeah.
They want that flexibility, and it makes sense because if someone's going to go into business for themselves, they have an entrepreneurial tendency.
Yes.
But if someone's buying a franchise, they still have that tendency, but they want that structure. It sounds like you guys have the balance quite right.
Yeah, I think we've worked it out really well. And there are a lot of factors in a large cafe restaurant. Like you can imagine a head chef that has his own ideas, new owners that are new to the industry. There's us guiding them as well. Baristas that think that they know what they're going to talk about with regards to coffee. All of these different influences, I think, and given the demographic of the area, we have to make sure that we're meeting what the community needs. So if we're not flexible, how do you be the best? I think you can't be. You've got to be able to meet the needs of what's around you.
And how does a business like Degani handle the sort of trend towards smaller, niche, scarce, unique type venues?
I think that there's nothing that we wouldn't ever consider as a potential site. So if it's a hole in the wall in the city versus an inline shop front in Melbourne, anything is possible so long as it's a great location.
Yeah, right.
So as with your role in the business now, what's a typical day? Is there a typical day? Like what does a day look like for you?
Yeah, I think in the last 6 months, my role's really changed. So I think I'm still finding my feet in what that normality looks like. I've changed my roles quite quickly up through especially since COVID. I've moved out of marketing roles and business development roles. I was also looking after development and site selection for a while. Now I've settled into my new GM role, and it's my opportunity, I guess, to try and guide Degani's coffee evolution for the next 4 or 5 years. So a day for me is I spend a little bit of time in the office, but not a lot anymore. I'm actually more on the road, and I'm really interacting with our owners and trying to take them on the journey with us. So the biggest thing that I'm focusing on at the moment is a little bit to do with owner engagement and understanding why we're trying to evolve our coffee offer. But the bigger thing is trying to take our customers along with us. So I guess if I elaborate on that, one of the biggest things I say is we're 25 years next year of being a brand, and that's pretty cool. But one of the biggest things I say to our owners is in 5 years' time, we cannot be the cafe brand that still has only one house blend. So that's my challenge and my opportunity, that we're going to evolve that offer.
And is that would it only be a wet coffee offer? I mean, house blends that you can consume as a latte in the cafe, or is that going to translate into like online and
all of the above,
home barista?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think for me, what's really exciting is even just at the moment, our biggest focus is trying to teach our customers what a single origin is. So we're doing small batch roasting at the moment, and we're training some of our baristas in store who are really excited about roasting as well, how to become roasters. And that's a really cool thing because they get to sign the bag and take it home to their cafe. They think it's great. But for our offer, slowly across each store, we're developing training for front of house team, baristas, educating them on what single origins are, and then slowly introducing that into store with a launch. And we're taking our time, but it's store by store, slowly educating our customers and our teams about great evolution in coffee.
again, this might be an assumption, but I assume that it's quite unusual that the owner or owners of a cafe maybe aren't hospitality people, haven't come from that background, don't necessarily know about running a hospitality business. How does given that you do have that challenge, how does Degani sort of handle that?
I think each side is a little bit different in that regard. Most of our owners have been with us for, I think the average is 7 years plus. So once they're with us, they don't really leave.
So they become hospitality people.
They become hospitality people. Certainly our newest owners have been learning very quickly about being hospitality people. But I think so long as you have a heart to serve and you actually love what you do and you are a people person, the rest can come. And everyone can follow a spreadsheet and a bouncing ball of how to order their milk, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Is training a part of it? Like, what do your training programs look like? That's
great.
Part of your baby, isn't it?
It is. When they first join, there's a 5-week induction training program we call it Coffee University, and they spend 2 weeks in the warehouse with us learning all things to do with business management. That's not the fun stuff, but they've got to know how to run a successful business. And following that, they spend 3 weeks in a store. So we move them between a couple of different store types, but mostly focused around the store type that they're probably purchasing. And they start at the very bottom. They'll be sweeping the floors, changing the bins, and they work their way all the way up over the next 3 weeks into managing shifts. Once their store is ready to open, or if it's a change of ownership and they're settling, then we will spend the next 2.5 weeks with them full-time in store, and they have 3 full-time resources. So we have our head chef in the kitchen retraining the kitchen team, we have our head of service on the floor retraining front of house team, and we have our barista trainer on the coffee machine. So they have a real chance to have the most successful and well-trained team before they begin.
On that front with the training, we've had a few different coffee equipment manufacturers on the show before. Are you looking at any solutions around automation or semi-automation of the coffee making process? Or
our biggest upgrade at the moment, or I guess movement in that area, has been to move our equipment stack to San Remo. So we're loving working with them. It's been a new partnership in the last 12 months.
Yep.
And I think the biggest tech-related stuff with that is moving to or elevating our coffee recipe with all of the amazing things that Tim Sweet can create. Everyone knows him, he loves him, but he's really helped us get a lot closer to our coffee recipe and understand how to make our coffee taste that much better through a San Remo. That's been eye-opening. Yeah. A few other things, we're moving to Malkonig grinders and really trying to automate that process and make the understanding of grind to dose a lot easier for our baristas. And I think the other thing is a little bit of milk automation on our large volume sites. That's been really interesting. Although I was looking at mice today, and there's a real push towards automation. I think it's fascinating.
Yeah. It's like everyone's caught in the middle at the moment. It's almost we spoke about this a little while ago. It's almost semi-automation. People aren't quite ready to take the full plunge. Like, they don't want to go first, so they're adding pieces of equipment to their bench.
Yes, I know. It just keeps extending and extending. It's a funny movement, because purists would say we can't do that. It's all about the handcrafted coffee creation, and yet I was at Mice today and saw the product launch for Frankie. Yeah. And that is phenomenal equipment.
It's an amazing machine, isn't it?
Yeah. But you would never think that that's the way that we were going. Yeah, it's very interesting.
I think the thing is, with a lot of those pieces of equipment, I always use the analogy of being in a Formula One car. So if I got in a Formula One car, I'd go fast, but not as fast as Lewis Hamilton. And I think some of these systems are, if you've got a really experienced and skilled barista on, they can still get the best out of this automated equipment.
Yes.
But if that person isn't available or they're not on shift, someone with more of an entry-level ability will still get exceptional results. And I think particularly when you're running systems, you're in a busy site, you need to standardise your process. They can aid people.
And it's coming back to that word consistency, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which is very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
You talked about this concept of coffee evolve, and you've mentioned single origin and there's the kind of constant pursuit of, specialty and that kind of thing. Where do you see Degani after that, at the end of that 5-year period that you're working on at the moment?
Yeah, I think we know that we're never going to be specialty, and I don't think we want to play in that space. I think what we do need to be able to do is just meet the market and be able to have really great alternative options in some special single O's, have fun creating seasonal blends and retail that people can take home and enjoy at home as well. That's the mission, is to also to educate our current customer base around how coffee isn't just one thing. And I think the next thing on our list, and we've started trialling it across Queensland, is batch brew and cold drip for summer. And that's already taking off. And at scale, because Queensland are some of our largest stores in the country, and teaching that number of people about Degani also has this great offer too. I think that's really helpful, and it's going to help us find our next generation of customer. So we've been around for 25 years. We've got a very big loyal customer base, especially here in Melbourne. But how do we find our next generation of person that's going to love Degani as much as the originals did?
Because it's got a bit of a cult following. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
I live near the Northcote Plaza store.
Yes.
And every day that joint is packed.
Yeah.
And heaving.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You can go there 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, pumping.
I'm not sure they ever need to close.
No.
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable.
No.
So, how important, what role does the brand itself play now? 25 years old, quarter of a century. How important is the brand to that cult following, or is it more of a localized thing?
I think the brand is important, but it's very much a localized thing. I think some of our operators, especially like Tammy at Northcote and George, they run a fantastic show, but it is all about them. They are the heroes. They are the face of that business. And
you can get cheesecake there at 10:30 at night.
You
Amazing.
can, yeah.
Amazing.
I love that joint.
That's why they're busy.
And an amazing Portuguese tart if you're really into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the brand is important to our growth strategy, and I think that's what more and more, as we grow, more and more people know who we are. I think it has the opposite effect for us in Queensland, which I find quite interesting, because we've only got 6 stores in Queensland, and they're all in different suburbs. No one's connected the dots, in my opinion, yet that we're a brand. So it almost has the opposite effect, where we literally are the independent to them, and it really helps them succeed. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever come across a brand that traded on both big brand recognition and anonymity all at the same time.
We'll take
huge advantage.
That's good. We're into that.
With so there's a lot of change in the retail space as well. It's becoming increasingly difficult for for cafes and businesses to sustain larger format dining and have them full all the time. Is that something that you're seeing in the business? And I suppose the next few years moving forward, are you looking at more of a grab and go format as part of the equation too?
Yeah, I think part of our development strategy is we actually pivoted away about 5 years ago from doing kiosks. We had a couple of them and didn't love the idea of you couldn't have enough seats to turn over to make enough average ticket. It wasn't the best value for money when you're still trying to put a full kitchen in a kiosk and service a full Degani menu. For us now, we've just done some really interesting things where we've created micro kiosks. The Glen is the smallest kiosk we have. It's probably, I think it's 55 square meters, including a full kitchen and seating. And these guys are killing it. And I think we're finally going back towards looking at how do we innovate and move away from cafe restaurant size offerings, and not having that huge offer of 7 a.m. until 10 o'clock at night, because that's a long time.
Yeah. A
lot of people that are buying a cafe are also buying a lifestyle. They'd like to be able to finish at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock and pick the kids up from school. That's the nice to have. So in the last 6 years that I've been with Degani, definitely we've leaned towards just the cafe offer, the finishing your day at 3:34. That's a nice time. And the bigger concept ones, they're just starting to fade out altogether. Yeah.
25 years next year, that's a significant anniversary. I presume the aim is to go for at least another 25.
We'd like to, yeah.
So the theme over that 25 is likely to move quite strongly down an environmental and sustainability kind of path. What is the forecast or the goals, for Degani on the sustainability front?
There's a lot for us to do. It's one of the passion projects of our owner, Bruce Scott, and he's constantly thinking about how do we improve. And for us, or for me personally, I know that part of my remit is going to be about how we make our roastery particularly green, and it's a big project for me. But I really want to focus on what we do with electricity and waste and all the things that make a roastery wasteful. The other thing that we talk about a lot is, we've done everything that most cafes have done. We had to move to paper straws, and we've done strawless cups, and we've done all the cutlery and all those things that you have to do. I think we were first to market with biodegradable cups 4 years ago, and that's pretty cool as for a brand in Australia. But the next thing I think that we'd like to tackle, and it's something that no one I think talks about, is actually how much single-use plastic is wasted in a kitchen. The amount of it's silly things like cling wrap and Chinese takeaway containers and all those things that a chef uses on the daily. You'd really love to work out how do we make that a change, and I think that'll be a focus for us.
Yeah, it's an interesting space. Like with APCO in the industry, 2025 targets of having to be fully sustainable, like reusable or compostable.
Yep.
I think a lot of companies are sort of looking at it at the moment and going, well, how can what I produce be like the byproduct of what I produce be repurposed rather than just going into the ground. So,
and I think the other thing is like making really sustainable choices. In everyone wants to have wholesale items to sell. They want to sell the best new cup and the best new whatever else it might be, but those items shouldn't be poor quality either. They should, if you're going to choose a takeaway travel cup that you want to sell to your customers, well, make it something that's going to last for a couple of years, not something that'll crack in the dishwasher next week. And I think that's important, making really smart choices with what you choose to sell.
Well, before we wrap up, we'd just like to ask you the same 3 questions that we ask everyone who appears on this podcast. What's the kind of the biggest challenge that you're facing currently in the business, and how are you tackling it?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge for us is actually going to be scalability. We're growing really quickly, and we often say that it's great to be growing, but we want to grow as a franchise in a sustainable way that means that the next 10 stores that we put on stay, not just taking sites for the sake of it, not choosing franchise partners for the sake of it. And I think that doing that in a sustainable and responsible way is going to be our challenge. But being able to scale it, we're still a small team. There's 8 of us in head office, and if 3 of those people are needed to open 1 store, it takes a long time for us to get 10 stores open. So we've got to tell those guys in development to slow down.
If you could go back in time and give your 20-year-old self a piece of advice, what would it be?
I think that I would say keep pushing, because everything that you're working towards is actually going to pay off for you. So be excited about coffee and be excited about where it's going to take you. I think 10-year-old me thought I was going to be a singing rock star. So if you thought I was going to be in hospitality, no way. So yeah.
Oh, it's just a rock star of a different type.
That's it.
And if you could start or get involved in a completely different business tomorrow, what would it be?
I guess a bit of a passion thing for me is fitness. So I think, for me, if I was going to go big drastic swing and change it, I'd be moving something into fitness. Yeah.
Coffee and fitness.
Yeah.
Well, I guess those 2 could go together. They both happen in the morning.
Yeah.
Smashed Avo afterwards. Sort of works. Yeah.
Maybe that could be the 5th store type.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Degani Gym.
Yeah, we'll work that out.
Yes. Okay, all right. Andrew Baldry, General Manager of Coffee Wholesale at Degani Australia. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.